I think if expansion is going to continue, the next target is Notre Dame. I think that's got to be your next target because I'm not sure how the TV rights would all shake out. I'm not sure. I know Notre Dame has a big deal with NBC. The Big Ten has deals with like Fox and stuff like that. So I mean, I don't know how all those logistics work out. I'm not a legal expert. I don't know how those all will break down. But I mean but I do know that something big could come from that in terms of a new deal. I mean, Fox and ESPN already have the rights to the Big Ten, but you could add the NBC. You could add NBC to that. You could figure out something on like Peacock or something like that. For certain
Notre Dame's they played.
Well, right, but I'm saying
last year 3.
Right, but I'm saying like you have more of a chance to like put other types of things on Peacock for the Big Ten as well. And then also, I mean, just real quick here, with the addition of USC, the Big Ten is going to be home to 5 of Notre Dame's rivals. I mean, if the goal is to maximize the TV money side of things, then those games would be big draws, not to mention matchups for Notre Dame with Ohio State, Wisconsin, Penn State, Iowa, etc. So, I mean, you're going to have, there's so much of a draw that Notre Dame would bring that I think, obviously I know they're the next kind of titan to try to figure something out, but that's got to be your next goal for the Big Ten.
Yeah, it definitely is. And that's the next domino to fall. Because there's teams beating down the door of the Big Ten saying, let us in. And they're saying, hold on, we got another big piece to fall. But I feel like if they let some of these other schools in that want in, it's going to ultimately force Notre Dame's hand. So look, TV rights, there are some rumblings that NBC may be getting some rights to Big Ten games as well now. Already. So there's that, and you hit the nail right on the head. The rivalries that Notre Dame has. So really, it all comes down to right now, we're waiting for Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame has come out and said, we're not in any rush to make a decision. We're completely fine as an independent. However, in my opinion is, look, if now we can see what the writing on the wall is, there's going to be playoff expansion. It's happening. It's going to happen. And because of that, and you have these 2 16-team conferences that have powerhouses in them now. Hey, what if they come together and they start working out a deal, and then the big, they're like, okay, ACC will work with you a little bit, and the Big 12 will work with you, and we'll lock up the champion from each of our conferences goes to the playoff, runner-up potentially gets in, and one at-large spot, and then you're battling against Cincinnati as well, or other schools from these major conferences. Notre Dame could potentially be left on the outside looking in, because also these conferences are getting bigger, and they want to be able to maximize their usage of these schools playing each other. So guess what? That might mean smaller non-conference seasons for these schools as well. So that then starts dwindling the opportunities for Notre Dame to play high-quality opponents. And if you don't have those high-quality opponents on your schedule or your resume, and you're battling for that at-large spot, you may get left out because your schedule, you won every game on your schedule, but guess what? Your schedule wasn't all that strong. Good for you. You beat UConn. You beat Wake Forest. You beat Georgia Tech.
Army, Navy.
You beat Army, Navy, Ball State. Good for you. You beat Toledo. Now you expect us to, on paper, you should be in the playoff based off of your roster. But man, you haven't done anything that he's. Look, Ohio State just ran the gauntlet in the Big Ten. Michigan finished with 1 loss. USC finished with 1 loss. You're telling us that Michigan, USC, and Ohio, they don't belong in there over your wins over Toledo? Honestly, that's what's going to end up happening, because Notre Dame is going to be left outside looking in. And it's going to be a detriment to their schedule. Honestly, I feel like The SEC is just going to sit back and say, look, Notre Dame, if you want to play here, you're more than welcome here. And that's it, because they're just going to say, look, we're the SEC. But if I'm Notre Dame, I'm looking at the SEC going, no, that does no, thank you. No, thank you. I don't want to play, because I'll end up in the same division as Alabama. And there goes my shot of playing in the college football playoff as well. Whereas the Big Ten, I think if the Big Ten really wants to put Notre Dame's feet to the fire, they need to go to the schools like Washington, Oregon, Stanford, and say, hey, look, guys, if you want North Carolina, schools like that, if you come, we'll invite you to the Big Ten. Come on over here. And then boom, there's all of a sudden, there's a lot of teams that are out of Notre Dame's schedule. And I think that will ultimately force Notre Dame's hand. Honestly, that's what I believe is going to happen next. You're going to see more Pac-12 teams jump ship to the Big Ten. So that way the Big Ten is able to work you're essentially going to see a Pac-12 like schedule out on the West Coast, but for Big Ten teams with USC, UCLA, I believe Oregon, Washington, and Stanford are the next big pieces for the Big Ten to take hold.
Yeah, and especially
because if they go to the SEC, it's just going to get messy trying to figure out travel. Because guess what, guys? This doesn't only affect football or basketball. I mean, those are the money sports. But you're also talking, this is going to affect, baseball, for instance. It's going to affect baseball big time. It's going to affect track and field. It affects swimming and diving. To some extent, if you end up adding Stanford, it affects, not really. It doesn't affect anything right now for this sport, but it affects
rip UCLA's baseball program. I know they've been pretty prominent, but if they're going to be playing, games in April in Bloomington, I don't know.
Ann Arbor.
Yeah, I don't know if they want to go there anymore.
Right. There needs to be other pieces that fall logistically. Seriously, logistically, there needs the other pieces to fall before Notre Dame. And I'm afraid everybody's just so held up on Notre Dame, seeing what they're going to do, that all of a sudden we're going to get to 2024 and it's, oh, crap. We actually have to figure out how to work USC and UCLA into our schedules. And guess what? We waited around for Notre Dame to make a move. SEC swooped in and or the Big 12, Big 12's trying so hard to stay relevant. They're trying to attract the remaining Pac-12 teams to their conference. Like, oh, come on. You are dying. You are dying. Just lay down and.
But I think they are in a better. I think they are in a better spot to stay alive than the Pac-12 is, for sure. The Pac-12 is all but. Yeah. Right now, as it stands right now, Notre Dame, looking for where they land, right now they do. You're right. They do hold on to all the chips. There was an article by Pete Sampson of The Athletic that said Notre Dame can essentially pick where they want to go. They've got attractive qualities, like you mentioned, to the Big Ten, ACC, SEC. They're
ACC is like Big 12, in my opinion.
See, but I think the agreement that Notre Dame does have already in place with the ACC for select football games and basketball, it does carry some weight. It may not be. If you were to rank the conferences, it may be third, but I think they do at least have a foot in the door where they can say, like, hey, we've already had a working relationship. You literally played in the ACC championship in 2020. Like, if what you're, if you're looking for essentially the same schedule you've had to remain the same amount of prominent as you've been, look no further than the ACC. I think that's a definite argument that they could make. The SEC. Notre Dame's been the SEC is the easy ticket. You can have 2 or 3 losses and still be in contention for a playoff berth. Notre Dame's had the relevance to be up there, be one of the teams that's not an SEC school to be in the college football playoff conversation. And of course, we mentioned all the rivalries with the Big Ten. So they've got. Notre Dame right now does hold the chips in their hand, does hold all the cards. So I think,
but that can shift. Shift so quickly, and I think that's everybody. Like I said, everybody's so hold up on the next piece that has to fall is Notre Dame. No, it's not. If the Big Ten and the SEC really want to go to 2 super conferences, and Notre Dame is the last remaining piece, you have to make the moves to force Notre Dame's hand. Because right now, Notre Dame can say, here's our list of what we want. Whoever can accommodate that list, yeah, we'll think about it. But like if the SEC swoops in and picks up Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia, and brings them in, and then the Big Ten swoops in and takes up a bunch of the other Pac-12 and maybe some Big 12 schools, Notre Dame's going to have to make a move. Right now, they don't have to. They don't have to right now. But if these two conferences keep, if their ultimate goal is to have two major conferences and Notre Dame is one of the key prizes, then these conferences need to do whatever it takes to get these other schools in that would then force Notre Dame to have to make a decision.
But I mean, even then, if like let's say 20 is the goal. Let's say 20 is the perfect number
I honestly think 20 is the goal.
So that's the goal for both conferences. We'll still. I'm gonna still believe in the ACC. Throw them in conference as well that it would play. What's stopping Notre Dame from when all of these conferences reach 19 schools from just being in the same position they're in now? Because yeah, you can keep expanding, but you ultimately, I mean, if you don't want to go over 20, if you don't want to have 21 teams, because I mean, 20 would almost be, if you're going to be this big, almost would be the perfect number because you could literally not play any cross conference games and just have the championship game. And I honestly, I like that better. If we're talking about a championship game, I like the idea of like, okay, you go play over there, we'll go play over here, and then the champion like will play for the title. Because
like
that would,
NFL.
Yeah, pretty much. But what's stopping them from being like Notre Dame being like, all right, fine, we'll wait you guys out. You guys go get your 3 other schools, to fill up your conference and wait on us, and we're in the same exact position because we don't have to join a conference.
But then these schools could still. All right, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say they'd almost, the ACC almost has the advantage in that way of speaking because they can be like, hey, you can just keep doing what you're doing, just be a part of our conference. Just you can keep your TV deal, you can keep your, well, obviously you have to play a couple more conference games, but you can keep all your TV stuff. We just want you with us. Like they could literally do that if they wanted to.
And my thing is like if the SEC swoops in and takes the top 3 schools from the ACC, and the Big Ten swoops in and takes the last remaining Big 3 from the Pac-12. Okay, so Notre Dame's schedule still, and then those two conferences, their next big move then would be to go conference only, no non-conference games, unless you have one, like you're allowed to play an FCS school if you want, But then Notre Dame, it's like, okay, you're left with what? You're playing Wake Forest, you're playing Pitt, you're playing Boston College, you're playing NC State. I mean, those don't have the same clout as we played Clemson, we played Florida State, we played Miami, or we played North Carolina, or we played Stanford, or whatever it may be. It then puts their feet to the fire because that the clout, the resume isn't as strong for them anymore. It's like, okay, good. You beat Boston College and you beat BYU. But there was nobody that was ranked within the top 15, top 10 on your schedule. So, if the committee is really going to stick to strength of schedule matters, then that is a way to make force Notre Dame into playing their hand, or deciding.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about it here. So if it's 2 10-team divisions in a conference, you would play, because you're one of them, you wouldn't play yourself. So you'd have 9 games within that division, then plus maybe 1 cross league game with a rival. So like the way it would be now is like Purdue would play all the teams in the Big Ten West, and then IU. I know obviously it would shift because Purdue's probably headed to the Big Ten East if it all shakes out like we're thinking it might. But So that would still leave 2 non-conference dates for Notre Dame to slip in there.
Yeah, but if you're in those Big Ten teams, you're like, man, our conference schedule
That's
is
true.
stacked. It's strong enough on
we don't want to play Notre Dame too.
We don't need to schedule Notre Dame. We're gonna schedule Ball State. We're gonna schedule Indy. We're gonna schedule UConn, or I was gonna say Indiana.
Yeah, no, it's just funny.
There are rules with scheduling an FCS school, and I'm sure that would change big time as well. But yeah, we'll schedule a Ball State, a Toledo, a UConn, or we'll go over to the ACC and say, hey, look, I mean, Purdue has got a ton of future dates set up with ACC schools. I mean, they're going to Syracuse this year. They're going to Boston College next year. They have a trip to Virginia Tech in the near future. And I mean, it's I think North Carolina is on there. And what's funny is that Purdue had I believe had recently set up a home and home in the far distant future with USC. So it's like, oh, okay. Now that one's going to happen.
That's a conference game.
Sure.